dramatic effect. You can track what's going on in the parks. Obviously, some are not being tended to as much as others. Sorry, Joe, I've driven by some of them. And that needs to stop. And if it's being tracked and you can keep up and you're taking full advantage of technology, I think we can do a better job of maintenance.
Thank you, Mr. Bell. Mr. Costello, 60 seconds on that point.
So Joe and I have sat across an opposite conference table asking for a definition of what his core services are and how much he's spending on each activity, how many people he's using, and what the pros and cons are if we decide to reduce the level of funding. And ideally, we did that with 23 departments. And if you go to my council website and you go to my committee meeting, you can access those core service matrices. This is about asset allocation. The city's budget, 75% of it is salary costs. 25% is what we probably could control without reducing services and people. In public safety, 63% of it is police and fire, and 93% of their budgets are salary costs. So there are challenges that we have to work through in order to get more funding for parks and recs. I'm not lying to you. This is a challenge that we're all going to have, and we all have different solutions for them. So I suggest you go to my website and you'll see my solution.
Thank you, Mr. Costello. Mr. Garcia.
You know, the maintenance is something that we have provided zero respect. But as a district council member, I used to come to Joe and say, Joe, we need to do more. And poor Joe would try to figure it out. We made enhancements to the parks in my district through using CDBG dollars and through other partnerships. We need to look at church and management districts to create partnerships with them to make sure that we recognize the fact that the park adjoining and abutting church or within the church boundaries should be respected. It's what I did when I was on council to make sure that the church boundaries in the area surrounded the Eleanor Tinsley Park so that we could provide some support in that regard. We have to be creative, folks. We're always going to have challenges. We can't sit paralyzed and assume that there's no solutions unless we take one particular approach. Day one, we sit down, we look for efficiencies, we find those resources, then we redirect them to where those priorities are. Parks will be a priority for my administration.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia. Pardon me. And this question will go first to you. What ordinances or policies will you support to address overall water and air quality issues? For example, what do you think about ordinances on plastic bag use and limitations on idling of engines that causes emissions? 60 seconds on that, Mr. Garcia.
Well, first of all, I support the anti-idling ordinance. I understand that there's something like 300 buses that are sometimes idling in the Herman Park area. That's ridiculous. We want people to be healthy, and yet we wonder why asthma is on the increase in the city. So we have to pay particular attention to this, and I would support the anti-idling ordinance. On the other side of the plastic ban ordinance, I approached it when I was on council trying to create a partnership with Fiesta as a pilot project, understanding that there's a significant market that would be willing to participate in voluntary recycling. We worked hard to get that pilot project up, but we couldn't find the resources to have Fiesta offset the cost for their recyclable materials. We got to continue that dialogue. I'm not sure whether the consensus is there to push that bag ban ordinance, but I'm going to be sitting at the table with you and others to see how we can forge ahead and accomplish the same thing.
Thank you very much. Bill King, 60 seconds.
So the air quality issue for us today is particulate matter, and that is primarily an issue of older diesel engines. And so that's what we've got to address, and that's what the anti-idling ordinance is designed to. As nearly as I can tell, most people in the construction and trucking are not even aware of it, much less digging for. So that's something we really got to get on top of. Now, the other thing that we continue to struggle with is water quality, and this is not talked about nearly as much as air quality, but some of you know I've been involved in Galveston Bay Foundation for many years, and it's something that we really worry about. We still have these astronomically high bacteria counts in the body, which is primarily a function of our crummy wastewater treatment system. You know, the city has been out of compliance with the Clean Water Act for decades, and we are currently negotiating with EPA again about another consent agreement. This is not widely discussed, but we're about to have to spend a whole bunch more money on our wastewater treatment system to try to bring it into compliance.
Mr. McVeigh.
So here's another example of government working in silos. We've got an issue at a parks forum talking about air quality when it's really a mobility problem. If we have idling trucks, that means we've got people stuck. That means we've got transportation trucks stuck. So we're not able to move things around and have a mobility plan in the city that is efficient. We need a mobility plan. We need to keep trucks out of this city. We need to take very aggressive action in keeping them on the Grand Parkway if they're able to, especially trucks that are coming out of the port. So we can do a lot of things with timing lights. We can look at diverting trucks and traffic, even if we have to let trucks use the Grand Parkway for free to keep them out of the city. So we've got to take a very proactive role in improving our air quality by looking at a mobility plan as well.
Thank you very much. Sylvester Turner, 60 seconds on your water quality.
An island ordinance, yes. Plastic bags, I think we need to look at it. Several cities, even states, have imposed some restrictions. They do clog up, and the way they do degrade, I think we need to take a look at it. So the answer to that is yes. With respect to the ozone level, in the city of Houston, we have made progress. It has been going down. That's a plus. With respect to the small particulate matter, we've been making some progress. We need to continue to be aggressive at that. We made some decisions in the 90s in terms of mass transit. We wanted to put more money on roads, and we built the Grand Parkway. But more people have been coming into the city, and more people will continue to come. We do need more mass transit. Quite frankly, we need multimodal forms of transportation. And since we are talking specifically about parks, we need more bike trails. We need to design, start building now, an urban, walkable, pedestrian-friendly city. I think that's critically important. We have to give people several options. And even as it relates to commuter rail, the line coming from Missouri City, Fort Bend, the 98 line, is something we need to pursue.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. Mr. Bell.
Well, I've been talking about the synchronization of traffic lights for about 20 years now. The technology is clearly there. We need to take advantage of it to get traffic moving. That's fairly low-hanging fruit when you're talking about emissions. I want to talk more about water quality, because if you look at the garbage in our bayous, it's horrendous. If you've ever been treated to Mike Garber's picture book, you see just how bad it really is with the number of plastic bags and the number of plastic bottles. And what I would like to propose is a Bayou Conservation Corps made up of young people, maybe young people from underprivileged areas that need a few extra dollars. It could either be a public-private partnership, or hopefully we can maybe get some federal money. It's modeled after a program in Washington, D.C. would allow young people to learn about the bayou and also help clean it up.
Very good. And Mr. Costello.
Well, the city passes ordinances sometimes just to feel good, and yet we cannot implement them to police them. And that's a fact. And I'd much rather have someone solving crimes than looking out for someone who's throwing a bag on the ground. However, our recycling program is something that is really important to all of us, and we should all be thinking about that. However, we're only doing recycling for residential, which is half the population of the city of Houston. We're not doing it for multifamily. We're not doing it for light and commercial areas. We need to change that. But the major problem with water quality is not really our wastewater system, even though we're not in compliance. It's actually stormwater. Stormwater is a major detriment to water quality. So we need to advocate for low-impact development. We need to design facilities to take care of the first flush so we can keep our water clean. We need to do porous pavement. Some of these other options that are available to us as we move forward, as we rebuild the city.
Thank you, Mr. Costello. And now we move on to questions about connectivity. And you will have 2 minutes, each of you, to answer this question, starting with Mr. Costello. How will you improve our street grid so that it provides not only a functional but also a robust and aesthetically pleasing network for people of all ages, abilities, and transportation modes? Specifically, what ordinance and policy changes will you take to make these improvements? Where on your priority list does this fall, and how would you fund it? 2 minutes.
So as described earlier about litter on the stick, the minute Rebuild Houston was passed in 2010, I went over to see Centerpoint to visit with them about how we harden our electrical grid and to get rid of our poles. And there are challenges there relative to doing that based on the way their grid layout is. And it's obviously an expensive endeavor. But that's what we're doing when we're rebuilding Houston, when we're rebuilding our communities. We're looking at ways to harden the facility to get these power poles underground, the lines. So those are one of the issues that we need to be focusing on. The other is we talk about complete streets. However, you can't do a contact-sensitive complete street throughout the entire city. It's just not functional. What we need to do is we need to dovetail that particular plan with the ongoing bike plan to figure out a way that we can have a grid that will allow east-west, north-south, that safely that people can ride bikes as an alternative mode of traffic. We also need to figure out a way to separate bikes from cars in whatever form it is. Now on Lamar Street, we obviously have those little rubber things, they call them armadillos. That might be fine, and hopefully that'll work. That's probably less intrusive and probably more visually aesthetic moving forward. But we need to figure out a way we can separate it. We need to also spend some time informing the public, even if we do the infrastructure that allows for a successful bike plan. We still have to inform the public that a bike is just as important and has the same rights on a road that a car does. And that's going to take time. That's not going to happen overnight. And I look forward to having those discussions with the bike advocates moving forward and looking forward to seeing what is showing up in the bike plan at the end of the day when it's due in April.
Adrian Garcia, 2 minutes on this subject.
Well, first of all, we want to create a network effect with every aspect of our green space and our hike and bike trail system. And I was so proud that when I was on council, I helped to push along the Rails to Trails initiative. But we got to continue, and I'm proud of where Mayor Parker has taken those efforts, and she's built on that. We got to build on her successes. But it also means that, look, we talk about making Houston a pedestrian-friendly city. It can't be pedestrian-friendly unless we create canopies throughout the walkways so that there's shade so people can walk. I've always said that, I want to create transit-oriented development around all the stops of the light rail system, so when people get off of those stops, they can walk to wherever they live, shop, work, and play. But they're not going to get off, or they're going to run to wherever they work, live, shop, and play, because it's too damn hot. We got to give them those canopies. And so I'm proud of what I've seen in Houston's plan, and I think it's incredible. I've been to other parts of the world where canopies is a common thing, and people are walking all over the place. And just as I was walking in here, it was incredible. And to see so many people enjoying today, this is a fairly warm day. So we got to build on that. But creating that network effect with the utility lines and ensuring that we increase the green space access throughout the city, I think is a great way to get folks to support our whole transit system and provide that it's friendly to use as you get on it and move around. But it is all about ensuring that there's a financial commitment. All of this sounds extremely glorious unless we make a financial commitment. I'm telling you right now, folks, reforming our finances, reforming our pensions is the way we pay for this. This is the way we maintain it. This is how we grow.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia. Bill King, 2 minutes.
Well, this is what I hate about politics. Complete streets is a great idea. They cost about 3 times what a regular street costs. I mean, we got a $150 million deficit next year. We're $20 billion in debt. How are we going to suddenly start paying 3 times as much for our streets as we pay now? Commuter rail, great idea. The cheapest line out there that's been studied in any detail is the 90A line. That's $2.5 billion. $2.5 billion. Now, Metro is already, its finances are wrecked after spending $3.5 billion on the light rail system. Where would we get $2.5 billion to pay for a commuter line going out 98? Does anybody ask how many people would actually ride it going down 98? Look, folks, we're facing some really critical challenges. There are neighborhoods all around this city that I visited where the streets are almost impassable. We had 4,000 houses that flooded on Memorial Day. There are 9,000 abandoned houses and structures in this city that need to be torn down right now that are just garbage heaps in neighborhoods. Now, most of you, like me, probably live over in this quadrant of the city between 59 and 290, where everything looks pretty good and it's all growing. I suggest you go to some of these other neighborhoods. You're going to find a very different situation. These situations where, these abandoned houses have been there for years with garbage stacked in front of them. You know how long that lasts over in my neighborhood in Tanglewood? About 2 days. But we let it go for years in those neighborhoods, and we're sitting here talking about spending $2.5 billion on commuter rail, or building complete streets are going to cost 3 times as much as regular streets. Let me tell you what, none of this stuff is going to happen. And you've got to be realistic about what your expectations are, and these are not realistic expectations.
Thank you, Mr. King. Mr. McVeigh.
Well, there's talk about burying the power lines, and, I agree with what Peter Brown has dubbed trash on a stick. Nobody likes to see it, but the reality is it's estimated between $6 and $8 billion to bury all of the lines in the city of Houston. That's unrealistic. It's not going to happen. But we can plan in a smart way for the future, so any future construction can encompass that. And that's what we're missing in the city of Houston. The general plan that was just submitted to city council last week or the week before, that's a good start. And I applaud that. But, it's not complete. We have to do much more to make it complete. But, the things that you want in the city of Houston, like complete streets, I am all in support of it. And that's how we modernize our city. That's how we become competitive on the global stage. We have to always figure out a way to pay for it. So anybody that comes up and says, we're just going to bury power lines, or we're going to do this, how do you pay for it? And it's bad for government to promise or to start something and then have to take it away from you, because it's not sustainable. We have to have a sustainable plan for the city of Houston that includes economic development, that includes the best parks in the country, that includes the best police department, fire department, and all the city services that we want. But we must be realistic, and we must have a plan that is foolproof, so future administrations can't undo the things that you want. And that's why a complete plan for the city of Houston is needed. It is needed right now. It was needed 2 decades ago. So that will be the first priority of my administration, is to make sure that we have a complete plan and that we are getting our financial house in order. Because as Bill said, and we agree with each other on this, this is the biggest pressing issue in the city of Houston, is our financial position.
Sylvester Turner, 2 minutes.
For 25 years ago, people said that people weren't going to spend money on parks either. But look at where we are today. And green does equal money. You got to build towards the future. Yes, I agree. You can't talk about complete streets without talking about complete neighborhoods, because the two go hand in hand. You do need coordination. You don't want to tear up the streets one day and then rebuild them another. So you have to bring all of the partners to the table. So that's a critical component. And then we're talking about building an urban, walkable, pedestrian-friendly city. That's critically important as well. A few weeks ago, Joe, we cut the ribbon in White Oaks on the Tiger Grant with the bike trail, establishing that network of off-road biking. That's another component to it. There are many different layers. It doesn't mean that you do it all at the same time, but you do have to have a roadmap by which to work where you're moving in that direction. If you don't start, you'll never get there, and that's what's critically important. Now, the answer is not just to stay in your cars. That's not the answer. That will paralyze the city, and it will paralyze our growth, and we will not grow. But we do not need a city of haves and have-nots. And there are certain things that all communities need. They need complete neighborhoods. They need complete streets. And a part of that is the green space to go along with it. You have 9 waterways, bayous that traverse the city of Houston. That's what we're working on now, 150 miles of connectivity. You have to start it. It doesn't mean that you come with all the money right now, but if you don't have a plan and a vision, we will never, never get there in this city. Now, this is not the city of yesterday. It is the city of today, building a city for tomorrow. And so you have to have a city where people, if they want to walk, let's provide them the means. If they want to ride their bike, let's establish a bike network in the city. Certainly we need the enforcement and all other things to go along with it, but let's start.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. Chris Bell, 2 minutes.
Well, I agree with Adrian that it is damn hot out there. And that's why we need to air condition those bike lanes. But I'm sure Bill's going to say we don't have money to do that. The question had to do with mobility in general and all forms of transportation. And what I have proposed is taking streets and traffic management out of the Public Works Department and making it its own department that would report directly to the mayor, a cabinet level position, if you will. So then anything touching on mobility, whether you're talking about the synchronization of traffic lights, building new sidewalks, bike lanes, or potholes, And we're actually required by city ordinance to talk about potholes at every one of these forums. So I bet our requirement for all of it. But obviously, the condition of the streets is shameful, and we're going to have to get our arms around it. And again, I think with my use of technology, it gives us an opportunity to really get serious about potholes, putting in a 48-hour time limit to get them filled. I couldn't believe that we had a 24-step process for filling potholes here in the city of Houston. I think that should be about a 2-step process. You call it in or you report it online, and then you send a crew out or a truck out to fill the pothole. We've already talked about the synchronization of traffic lights. We've talked about sidewalks, and incredibly important. People are entitled to be able to take a safe walk in their neighborhood. Let's talk about bike lanes, and I want to applaud Bike Houston. I think they've done a great job in focusing attention on connectivity and the need for safer bike lanes. And the only way they're going to be safer is if we start enforcing the 3-foot rule. And some of my opponents disagree with me, but I feel strongly that the police department is going to have to make an example out of some drivers and cite them for disobeying the 3-foot rule if people are going to be serious about it going forward. People are entitled for a safe ride on their bike.
Thank you, Mr. Bell. All right, this question to Bill King, and we'll have, I believe it's 60 seconds to answer this question. I think that's where we're at here. Houston Parks and Recreation Department, Joe Turner did stuff this guy with dogs, I think, needs $2.5 million to address the street median maintenance of our city. Medians need to be maintained every 14 days. The current budget only allows for maintenance every 21 days, which has been the case since the layoffs of 2011. Parks and Rec has adopted out many of the explanation of management districts and civic organizations and individuals, but has not been able to get back to 14-day maintenance cycle. This affects the beauty of our city in the eyes of our visitors and our citizens and our economic viability. What are you going to do about it, Bill King?
Joe, let me write you a check real quick for that. Now, look, this gets back to the same financial issue. We kind of beat this dead horse probably enough tonight. But the truth of the matter is, everything that we want to do here, look, I've been involved in Galveston Bay Foundation for 20 years. I've gone to Trash Bash and picked up trash along the bayous. I've gone to Marsh Mania and planted grass. I've gone and got crab traps out of the bay. I served on the board, served as chair of the board. My heart's with you, but I gotta, you have to run this city with your head, and the head is the finances. And I'm telling you, what we've done is allowed a financial model to develop that's squeezing out everything else. And a lot of the municipal literature these days, they talk about service bankruptcy. The city's not going to go into bankruptcy. We're not going to default on our debt, but what we do is we continue to squeeze every other department except those big fixed costs. And if we don't do something about that financial model, we can't do any of the things that you guys want to do that you're talking about.
Thank you very much, Mr. McVeigh.
Here again, it's back to efficiencies within government. We've got silos that are within every city department. There is so much waste in government. When the first thing you got to do is to go in and create an efficiency study and see what we can maximize and share resources back and forth between departments and other agencies. Even with the county, we need to look for opportunities to do public-private partnerships to make government actually work for you. Can we find $2.5 million for this? Probably so. In a $5.5 billion budget, I'm sure that we can. But every city department is experiencing the same thing. We need more money for this. We need, for whatever their shortfall is. So we've got to just really look at every city department, retool it, rebuild it based on new standards.
Mr. Turner, 60 seconds.
And it is a $5 billion budget, and I certainly would want to take a look at it. I would do the same thing that I've been doing at the state level for 21 years. I've been on the Appropriations Committee for 21 years. When the state faced a $10 billion shortfall in 2003, and I'm a Democrat, there was a Republican that asked me to sit at the table and help balance the books. When we faced a $27 billion shortfall in 2011, there was another Republican speaker who asked me to sit at the table to help balance the books, 1 of 5. And in part, that's one of the reasons why the Texas Monthly has named me one of the top 10 legislators, even in this last legislative session. We engaged in zero-based budgeting in 2003. You bring everything down to zero, and you take a look at all of the priorities. And what I would say to Joe, and what I would say to any other person with the city of Houston, let's look at all the priorities. Let's see what things did. Let's see whether or not we are funding things that were priorities 10 years ago, but they're not priorities today. So I don't want to give Joe a yes on that, but I do think there's a process for which you go through to determine what your priorities are.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. Mr. Bell, median maintenance.
Well, I think that I'm also a big advocate for zero-based rec. We have been for a long time, and I think we can find some dollars that way. I also think that if we do a better job of tracking data, it's going to lead to greater efficiency, not only a more responsive city government, but also a more efficient city government. So I do think we'll be able to find some dollars, and I'm not as pessimistic as some of my opponents in that regard. I also think when you're talking about medians, we might be looking at or considering taking it out of Parks and Rec and making it the responsibility of Public Works or Streets and Traffic Management, the department I spoke of earlier. That seems a more logical place to put it, freeing up that money for park maintenance and other things. I don't know if that should necessarily be the responsibility of Parks and Rec, because I really don't look at the medians as park space. So.
Mr. Costello.
Yes, during those meetings I had with Joe, I was surprised to hear that Parks and Rec take care of the maintenance of the medians. It should be Public Works. The interesting thing about Rebuild Houston, 25% of the funds that are raised annually are for maintenance. And that money grows on an annual basis. The money is there for Public Works to take that over as a responsibility, freeing up the couple of $1 million that Joe needs. But I want to go back to something that Bill talked about in terms of complete streets. You can build a complete street within an existing right-of-way. And how do you do that? You shorten up the width of the lanes, you slow down the traffic, you allocate a certain amount of width for bikes, and you'll have room for sidewalks. It is not 3 times the cost. As an engineer and someone who designs and builds roads, I know how much it's going to cost. Complete streets is a solution for us in the future.
And Mr. Garcia.
You know, the maintenance of the medians is a really interesting issue, because I hate how they look when they're totally unkept. And sometimes some of the most humblest neighborhoods have some of the sorriest looking medians. And so once again, it is an issue of, number one, strategic alignments with TERS and management districts to help offset the cost. It's also looking for those efficiencies so that we can reinvest in those elements that are important for the look and feel of our city. We have to make a good first impression, folks. We only get one chance, and we have to do it. But also on the issue of complete streets, the money is there. It's about, when we are redoing streets, when we're repairing streets, when we're redoing the infrastructure, when we're doing street reconstructions, the dollars are already being spent that can be applied to complete streets. It will not shoot the cost of those projects up. We can get these things done. It's just a matter of opening the hood, finding out where we can find those resources.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia. Appreciate that very much. We're coming toward the end of our forum this evening. This will be the final question of the night. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to address this question. The region's future depends on the area's quality of life. Partnerships with Harris County, other government entities, as well as private entities, will be a critical part of improving Houston's quality of life. As you conclude tonight, please tell us, how are you planning to improve Houston's cooperation with other entities and to take Houston to the next level during your first term? The question first goes to Chris Bell. 2 minutes.
Well, again, thank you for coming together this evening, and it's incredibly important. And as an advocate for green space here in the city of Houston, as I said at the beginning, seeing the progress that we have made, it would be extraordinarily foolish to turn back the clock and start going backward. We are a progressive city here in the city of Houston, and we are perfectly positioned to move to the next level and to not only be the 4th largest city, or soon the 3rd largest city, but to actually start acting like the 4th largest city or the 3rd largest city. I want to see Houston become one of the most modern cities in the entire country, and we're not going to be able to do that without being very serious about green space and continuing to improve what we already have, and finding new green space and finding new opportunities. I feel like I've always had vision in this regard, and I'm going to tell you all a story in closing tonight. Mike Garber, who's sort of a hero of mine, given what he's done for Buffalo Bayou, was kind enough to take me on a canoe trip shortly after I got elected to the Houston City Council in 1997. We started outside the Loop near Voss, going down Buffalo Bayou, and went all the way through downtown, ending up at Allen's Landing. It was one of the most incredible trips I had ever gotten to take, seeing some incredible backyards, but incredible scenery, and then the urban landscape as you come into downtown. And I love Mayor Lanier, who I was serving with at the time, but I went to talk to him about what an asset we had and how we could be doing so much more with the bayou. And this is one area where I really disagree with Mayor Lanier. He said, well, I'll tell you one thing you won't find on the bayou, and that's people. He said, smart politicians go where the people are. Well, I said, Mayor, maybe if we did something with the bayou, we'd see some people there. Well, we have done something with the bayou, and now you see the extraordinary success. We need to build on that. Thank you so much for letting me be here this evening.
Thank you, Chris Bell. Steve Costello, 2 minutes.
I'm an employer, and the new young professionals that we employ now want to know what they're going to do when they leave our office. It's not about a job anymore. They're coming here to make a living. They're coming here for quality of life issues. So they want to know what the plan is, what's happening in the city. But the question was about how do we maximize our resources? How do we work together with other interest groups? This community is a very generous community. And unfortunately, we sort of rely a lot on the philanthropic community. And we need to do a better job collectively of using our dollars wisely. That being said, we have a number of joint projects that we work with Harris County. We're all taxpayers of both the city and the county. And we should do a better job of figuring out a way to where we can save money on your behalf. And we've done that on a couple of projects. We just recently, as council members, we just recently approved the joint processing center, where the city will get out of the jail business and will allocate money on a 70-30 split with the county. We need to do the same thing on the crime lab. That's something that's been an ongoing discussion for many years, at least as long as I've been on council. So those are the things that we have been doing. We've been doing a number of joint projects with Harris County in infrastructure and flood control improvements, and we need to continue to do that. So that's how we leverage our dollar. And then we need to pursue grants. I mean, we have a number of our departments that continue to pursue grants, working together with both the state and the federal government. And as your mayor, I will continue to do that. And I want to thank you all for having us here tonight. This is probably the largest crowd that I think we can all attest to that we've actually had an opportunity to talk about and talk with. So I appreciate everybody being here, and I also appreciate the cross-section of age groups here, by the way. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Costello. Anthony Garcia, 2 minutes.
Well, thank you again, all for being here, but most importantly, thank you for what you've all done. You have really moved Houston along, and we should all applaud you. But I want to thank you because too often, when you talk about a city and you talk about the challenges that a mayor may have, it's centered on the brick and mortar. It's centered on cars and potholes and things of that nature. And obviously, folks, look, we're a growing city. We're robust. We're doing incredible things, and we have an incredible growing population within our region. And so we are going to have challenges. But we shouldn't give up our vision for tomorrow for the fact that we have to deal with some of the here and now. We invest in our parks. I mean, look at what happened with the Discovery Green. I mean, what was there before Discovery Green occurred? Parking lots. You helped to invest in Discovery Green, and now what do we have around Discovery Green? Economic development. Billions of dollars being generated by that one little park. And now look what's happening at Market Square Park. Incredible. And so when you invest in our parks, great things happen for our city, and you set our city for a great course down the future. And this also means that we don't give up on things like complete streets or the idea that one day we will have zero bike and pedestrian fatalities in the city of Houston. We don't give up on that because we have financial challenges today. You know how we do that? We make every moving citation violator go through those safety classes so that we can create critical mass, and every driver out there that's out in a car not following the rules will understand that, you know what, we care about bikes. You better get the message, guy, because we're going to write you another ticket if you don't. So this is all about leadership, folks. It's all about bringing people together, sitting down with Harris County, sitting down with TxDOT and others so that we can invest in our parks. I'm Adrian Garcia, and I want to be here.
Thanks so much, Mr. Garcia.
So, I'm sorry, the question was how do we cooperate?
Yes, Yes, indeed.
Ruby, okay, so I'm just a little confused there for a second, I guess. So look, I think that the whole issue of our regional governments is a very critical issue for this region. If you take the area that's in the unincorporated part of Harris County, it's about 1.8 million people. If that were its own city, it would be the second largest city in Texas after Houston, and it would be the fifth largest city in the United States after Houston. That's how large this area is. County government was never designed to provide municipal services to an area that large. And I think figuring out how do we cooperate better with the county and with other levels of government is really the low-hanging fruit, both in saving money and also doing a better job of compliance and regulation. I'll give you an example. It's not too far from here. If you drive out Beach Nut towards the loop, just before you get to the loop, you'll come to a location where there are two wastewater treatment plants, literally a stone's throw from each other. One belongs to the city of Houston and one belongs to Bel Air. Now, my understanding is that the city of Bel Air and Houston negotiated for years over doing a joint plant there, could never agree to it, got mad, and so they both go off and build their own plants. I cannot even imagine how many millions of dollars it's cost the taxpayers of both cities to have those two separate plants, not even thinking about what the compliance costs are and when one of them doesn't work and what they dump in to raise value. That sort of turf battles, we've got to get over that. I mean, I would like to see, Joe, what we can do with the county parks department to cooperate and do joint maintenance of some of these facilities. Certainly easy things like the crime lab. I applaud city council for doing the joint processing center. There's a whole variety of things that we need to look at. This is really the low-hanging fruit where we can get not only cost savings, but we can also get better regulatory compliance.
Thank you, Mr. King. Ready to take 2 minutes on cooperation. Thank you.
Well, the first thing I'm going to do after I'm elected mayor is take a canoe trip with Chris Bell down the bayou. So hopefully he won't bring a banjo. But he doesn't get to do all the jokes. We've got a lot of opportunities in this city. And what my grandfather always told me was that a winner makes a commitment and a loser makes a promise. And the commitment that I make to you tonight, and I've made it, for throughout 50-some debates that we've been to, or forums, is that we will have a sustainable plan for the city of Houston, one that encompasses everything that we need, we want, we expect out of our government going forward. That's the commitment that you're going to get. That will include parks and recreation and green space, things that I use to sell this city, to bring in new development and business from Europe and the Middle East and other parts of the world. We've got to have a good park system. We've got to have good transportation. We've got to have sustainability. That's the key here. We get our financial house in order and move forward. So what you get is sustainability, and that's what you expect and deserve. I think with cooperation between the city and the county and other state and federal, the state and federal government, is that there's no enforcement. So we have divisions. City's going to take care of one issue, and the county's going to take care of another, and then there's a gap. And nobody knows who's supposed to do it. Nobody knows where the jurisdictional boundaries are. There's no enforcement. I'll take that another approach to that, is that we need to get more federal and state funds in the city of Houston to cover those gaps. And we also need to look for efficiencies within county and city departments, because quite frankly, the city has outgrown your government. You've outgrown it. The city continues to grow. People continue to come to Houston for various reasons. We need to modernize our government. We need to expand in the right ways. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Turner, 2 minutes.
For the last 26 years, I've been a member of the Texas legislature. Twice I've been chosen to chair the Harris County Legislative Delegation, which consists of the 25 to 26 legislators from Harris County, both Democrats and Republicans. I just recently gave up that chairmanship a few months ago. Over those 25 years, I've worked with the county quite a bit. In fact, even in this cycle, legislative cycle, I visited with every one of the county commissioners and the county judge with the exception of one. My relationship with them has been very positive. The same thing for members of the congressional delegation. Even on these issues, it's going to take a collaborative effort between the county and the federal level to address many of the issues that we have. In the legislature, I'm vice chair of the House Appropriations Committee, chosen by a Republican speaker, and have been chair since 2011 and continue to be chair today. We're going to have to work together. We are a diverse city, but if you live in the city, you also live in the county. So it's going to take the two of us having to work together on these particular issues and many, many others. I certainly want to applaud the efforts that have been done, for example, Memorial Park and Herman and Buffalo Bayou and the 2020 project. Those are excellent. And I certainly want to commend Joe for the work that he has done. But I think as we move forward, it's also important for us to build equitable neighborhood parks. I think that is a critical component. It's certainly critical to me. I saw what has happened, for example, in Acres Home, when a park that did not, just 29 acres of nothing, and it was turned and transformed. Things happened, and families literally are now enjoying a much richer life. But they need to be all over the city. In every quadrant of the city, there really should be signature parks. Even in the Southwest, we've got Willow Water Hole, almost 300 acres that are sitting there, one pavilion, but 300 acres. It is a gold mine. We cannot ignore it. And we certainly should take and put the investment into that. I think when we do that, we all win.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I think I speak on behalf of all of these men up here. This is an impressive crowd. Look behind you. Standing room only at a Mayoral forum. How often have we seen that? Please give a round of applause to the people of This is very impressive. Thank you all for being here. Remember, early voting starts on October 19th. We're less than 5 weeks away from electing a new mayor. Thanks, folks.